Hey, it's Dr. J, and welcome to a new little interview section that I'm going to be doing over the next few months. And it's called Straight Talk. For sales and business tips, that's great. But when I get hold of somebody that's done stuff, I mean, really done stuff, and actually been out in the marketplace in this genre of sales and leadership, we sometimes have these private conversations and we talk about things that, we don't finesse, we just talk it straight. And I've had the delight of working with Shane Holt for a few months now, and he's been a superstar in our Sales Authority Club. He's an implementer. He's a great leader. And, I always believe if you can impart and empower things to other people to make the business grow and help them grow, you become more valuable. So we had a good conversation about a number of things that we're going to cover today. And it was a lovely straight talk. And I had the idea to say, hey, let's share some stuff. Now, let me give you a little bit of background before I bring the great man on. Shane's only 28 years of age. The experience he's had has been outstanding. The success he's had, I'm sure he doesn't like to brag much, but I'll push the point. He is the customer care and sales manager currently in a very successful business. In the past, he's been a sales professional, started from the ground up. He actually had to go commission only as well, not knocking on those doors, but he found a formula that worked. And then he became a national sales manager, and now he's in a company and he's now driving their forces. Now, he's had significant success, but there are some secrets to success that a lot of sales managers just keep doing and impart with their team, but he shared it with me the other day, and we're completely on the same page. So with no further ado, welcome, Shane. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Look, when it comes to sales, and sales is just a conversation to help people make good decisions, and you always come from the right place, but you are a stickler in wanting to learn and implement. And over the years, you've become a manager and a leader. I think you lead people and manage process. Now, given that you've evolved into that area, I'd love you just to get your experience from evolving from a sales professional to a sales manager and now a sales leader. Just give us a couple of things that have happened that have really made sure that you're able to impart and empower. And actually, guys, this guy actually just doesn't do sales himself. He actually gets his team to overperform. So just give us an insight of what you've learned over the 8 years that you've been doing this.
I think that a big part of it was a lot of the mentors that I've had along the way have really assisted me in doing that. A lot of people believing in me and seeing my potential as well, but also getting in there and doing the work, like getting your hands dirty. And I know it's hard, and at times that you have a lot of failures, you have a lot of times where you want to quit, but I guess showing that I want to push through, and then putting that on my team. So having great leaders myself in the past, and then they've helped lead me to be the person who I am today, and then still continuing to have great leaders and mentors even today that help me continue to learn and to grow as a leader, because there's a lot to learn and you continue to grow and change. And I think it's just the big thing for me is just to continually stay open-minded, to learn and to know that I don't know everything, and there's always ways that you can do things better. So it's probably a big part of it for me.
I hope everyone heard that. We started with a big rock here. Shane's had significant success, but what he's done is actually gone into businesses where he can work with people that will inspire him, but also give the opportunity to grow. The question I'm going to ask you, are you surrounding yourself with people that can empower you, help you grow? And if they're not in the close proximity, where can you find them? Doesn't mean you have to change, but what can you do to make yourself continually grow? And you also said that doing the work. It's a big call cry, but a lot of people want all of the success. I regularly hear, Shane, that people want to have results and success, but the activity and work they do not match their desire to have those goals. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with accountability and knowing why they're doing something. If I ask one of my staff members to do something and it might not be something they usually do, or it might be something that they don't like doing. We don't like making cold calls. but I think it's a big understanding of why they're doing it, and them understanding why, the importance of why they do that to make the other parts of their job, it all come together as a whole. So I think the why is a big part of it that we need.
So do you take time to actually say, I want you to do this, this is why I want you to do it, and then you get feedback that they understand that?
Yeah, I want to make sure that they understand what they're doing, obviously, and then that they understand why, and that they're also motivated to complete the task.
Now, we all know about the 95% and 5% rule. We all know that. 5% of people are going to do what they say they're going to do. They understand the why. And then the 95% actually say, well, there's all of these excuses and blames and so forth. What happens when, after you've gone through that why, and you've gone through the activity, you've done the role play, the PDR, and they still don't do it? In other words, maybe there's a lack of enthusiasm, maybe there's no passion, maybe they have low integrity. I mean, whatever. What do you do when that happens? Because I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah, you see it all the time. I think it's a tough one, and you have to navigate it depending on the person. It's just learning about having a good discussion with them and diving a bit deeper into why they're doing that role, and potentially why they're not looking to do the task, because they might not be suitable for the business. It might not be the right role for them in the business, or that activity or that task might be better suited to somebody else. So or just like diving deeper into finding that why again. So like having a discussion, it's like a coaching discussion really, and letting them answer that to you. So rather than me giving them the answer to everything, or telling them, it's them telling me the solution of.
Okay, that's a big rock, guys. Listen to that. Shane doesn't just say, you should. He'll ask them questions so they tell him what they should do. And I'm assuming you're going to get them to show you they don't know how to do it. But if they, after all that great coaching and leadership, and you've gone through that process and they still don't perform, maybe it's a skills challenge, but if you've done the practice, they have the skill, what do you do?
Well, I think it's finding what motivates them a lot of the time. So a lot of times, and especially if it's the same for me, I know my motivations personally. So so I know what motivates me, but something different motivates everybody. So I think like a lot of the time, someone might be I know they can make calls. I know they can make sales, and I walk in to see how they're going, and they're sitting on their phone writing some text messages, not making any calls, But I think that's, it's like, well, what's going on? Having a discussion and saying, if you complete these calls and make some sales, if I know that their motivation, I know that if they know that they're going to get a $20 voucher or something, and that's what's going to motivate them, that they'll do it. But that's not going to motivate everybody. Some people want like recognition to the team. So it's understanding, I guess, your team and understanding their motivations, not just sending them targets, telling them what to do, giving them the role plays and training, and then on your way. It's more than that. It's a conversation and knowing your team on a deeper level. And
absolutely right. And
yeah,
hear what Shane's saying here, guys. KPIs and driving KPIs are critical to measure. That is critical. But what Shane's saying here, and I totally concur, is they're not going to drive hard just to make the KPIs all the time. They might want time off with their family. They might like to earn a bit of commission, but the commission means nothing unless you know what they're going to spend it on. If it's whatever motivates them or makes them happy. And we have a process, we've done it, haven't we? The 21 questions to find out what makes them happy, what makes them sad. And you drive the emotional personally, not just the KPIs. So I think that's a big thing. And you do that incredibly well. Have you had some success with doing that?
Oh, a lot of success. I've learned a lot about my staff. So learn a lot about the ways that they think also, because when you have a conversation with someone about what motivates you, and you allow them to openly talk about that to you. And I don't like to be like the boss kind of person. I'd rather talk to them as a friend. And then they have that conversation. They're like, oh, I really want to do this to the house, or you can find a bit about their personal life, what they're doing, and then you can reward them so it's a very personal thing. And I know for myself too, when I get a reward that's like connected to something outside of work, or that really sort of, you feel it, like when you get it, like you get that.
Yeah, then there's gratitude for something that they've taken the time to think about. Actually, Oksana the other day was saying, well, if you're going to send somebody a gift to say thank you, make sure that you know what makes them happy. She's just giving an example of, I get people send me lovely bottles of wine or beautiful, beautiful bottles of champagne. The problem is I don't drink. So they haven't gone to the extent to find out what makes me happy. So I think that's a big rock for everyone to do. And as I said, we have the 21 questions that it takes a little bit of time to do, but it gives some feedback. Now, I love the way you've actually separated KPIs and budgets and targets to the motivator. Now, obviously, people need to know the budgets and targets. If they know budget and target, now budget is absolutely should be a given, but the target is what you drive. I know that's what you do. And I just want to know from your perspective, given that we'll have all of the personal stuff in place, how important do you think having clear indications of the key performance indicators, in other words, the activities that you do every day, benchmarks that they get measured upon to make sure that they are doing the activity to achieve the target? How important in your scale of importance do you think that is to be able to drive it? Now, even though that let's say you know their driver, but to get back down to business, black and white, we need to make profit. So activity with success equals profit. And then they can celebrate by having some time off with their family. But how important in the levels do you think those KPIs and benchmarks are?
Well, for me, they're up the top. I think every day I walk in, the first thing I look at is my numbers and the targets for the day and the activity that we need to achieve to reach those targets.
Do you review yesterday as well to make sure that we've achieved? I know that you'll actually probably do that before you go home, but do you then do a quick recap of what you have done so you know what needs to be completed?
Yep. Yeah. I'll look at the day before, less looking at the activity, but more the results of the day before. So rather than getting down to the nitty gritty of the day before really in a deep dive, I would probably, or spending too much time on it, I'd probably look at the bigger picture of how many tours we completed and how many sales, rather than looking at the deeper of who did what kind of thing. See what we achieved and then adjust that day based on that. If we had a really slow day, then it's going to make that next day we're going to have to want to achieve more. So we're going to have more activity that we're going to need to achieve that day. And if I need to jump in and help out, then so be it.
Okay. Big rock again. Shane goes and looks at the result. Doesn't just look at, well, how many calls did you do? It firstly looks at the result. How many presentations did we do? And how many sales did we make? Are we on budget? So there's the big rock. There's the big one. But if there's been poor performance, low results, you then go and have a look at the activity and the percentages and so forth. If it's going well, you can always review that and to give acknowledgement. But if it firstly goes to the result, if the result's good, have a quick look. But if there's poor results, you can then know, oh, well, gee whiz, where is the weakness? Now, when you find that weakness, how swiftly do you move on fixing the weakness based on the activity?
Oh, immediately for me. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I have a little bit of a knack for finding weaknesses. And I always do look for weaknesses, even when we are succeeding, because you can always improve on things. So, I have spreadsheets of data where I can analyze our performance and find where we might have a weakness appearing, because cracks do appear, and you always have cracks. You can never be perfect all over. So, and when you find those little areas, you can run a training for your whole team. You can sit down and coach people in your team based on that little weakness. I might alter scripts and send scripts out and role play based on something. Like if we're getting a low show rate or something like that, I can deep dive into that. I can chat to you about it and we can find a solution, and I can go and then make a very quick adjustment to the team on that. Or even if it's just sending some motivation out, or like a little bit of information on how we can improve that little number. And I don't just say like, we need to do this. I make sure that they understand that these are the numbers. This is where the hole is that I can see and this is where I want you to improve. So they're looking at my spreadsheet as well of numbers, and they can see that this is where the team is lacking as a whole, and where they can change that and improve.
So with that, when you look at your numbers, because you're very good at it, as we know, most sales professionals will do the numbers for their sales manager. Do you teach them to be able to have a look at those numbers themselves? And maybe, there's usually about 10 to 20% of them want to evolve into a leader in some description. But even if they don't want to, do you teach them how to use their KPIs instead of just reporting on them?
Yeah. So I sit down with them. I try and sit down as much as I can, but it'll be like usually once a week or a fortnight when I can have a discussion with them. If I can get a chance, I'll just quickly jump by if they've got a minute and have a chat to them and talk about their numbers. So I have a universal accessible spreadsheet, which is like a Google sheet, which they input their numbers and then everything gets dropped into like a sort of a home-based sheet where it has everything there of our achievements and our targets. So everyone can actually see everybody else's numbers. So I'll generally have a discussion with them and say, look, this is where you are this month, and this is where this person is, and this is how you're tracking. And, maybe it's like sometimes I'll try and link them up with other people in the team, and I'll say, oh, do you think that because I know that other people in the team might have better insights than I'll even have, because they know what they're achieving in certain areas in their numbers. I'll be like, well, look at their close rate. It's huge. I think you maybe have a chat to them and see what they're doing at the moment. Because
look, I think
that's a good thing to do
when you've got a team of people to be able to do it. Now, I guarantee you some of the people listening, especially if they're a team leader or owner of a business, are going to say, hey, look, Shane, you're right, mate, but I don't have the time to do it. Now, I'm going to do a straight talk here. Find the time. This is essential. It's not, I've got to find the time. It should be mandated. If you don't have the time, make the time. Because if you don't measure your numbers and assist your team members, and by the way, if you're a solo warrior, if you're looking at your numbers and you're having a problem, you've got to reach out for help. Come into the SAC and ask some people in the Sales Authority Club. Ask your buddies if you're not in the SAC. At the end of the day, ask for help, because if you don't know how you're tracking, it's a catastrophe. Now, I'd love to know your opinion on it. I think if a lot of people are going to say, oh, I haven't got time, mate. I've got so many things to do. My response is, hey, get rid of some of the other things and start measuring your numbers, because if you don't, they're not going to change and you're going to come unstuck. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and my thoughts continue to sort of change on it as I learn more about these kinds of things. And for me, obviously it's prioritizing different jobs, prioritizing what is going to be the biggest return on investment for certain things. So if I have a list of 20-
I'm going to butt in here, guys. Hear what he said? Return on investment. We're going to talk about that in a minute, mate. You hit a nerve with me here. Is that ROI? So continue, but yes, measuring that return on investment of time. So continue.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that, so what I'll do is I'll sort of measure say if I have a list of 20 things I need to do. I sort of will break that down based on what needs to be done. Obviously there's things that have to be done within the business, but also the value that's going to be on those activities that I need to do. So my time that I'm spending on things that I know that it's going to be a return on, there's going to be money coming into the business based on that. So I'm not doing things that are going to cost money because I cost money, the business pay me. So so anytime I do something that doesn't bring any money into the business is a loss. So it's bringing losing money for the business.
Now here we go. This is exactly. So I'm hearing from you that accountability on the activities and the results is critical. Was that a yes or a no?
It's a yes, yeah.
Okay. So given it that, we've got all these activities. Remember, guys, you were saying he measures the results to make sure that we've got an ROI. Now, ROI means return on investment. In other words, I'm spending X amount of money for team members and facilities and so forth, or services, and time has to have an X. In other words, what's the multiple? Is it a 2X, two times? Is it 5 times? If I'm spending $100, do I want $1,000 as an ROI? Because if we don't measure ROI, in other words, cash flow is king. we've got things being done on a daily basis. We're making 150 phone calls. We make no appointments. Well, guess what? There's been no ROI. Now, your customer care people will be looking after people and making sure they're satisfied so they stay and continue to use your product or service. Or you might do customer care and it's not a recurring revenues where they then feel that you do care and then would possibly refer. Now, return on investment is something that people don't talk about, Shane. You know this. Now, in your experience, have you ever been in a position where they've started to measure ROI on the activities that everyone did in the sales and in customer care?
I have, yeah. So in the past, in a company I worked in, we're in a pretty bad position, the company. So what happened was they made everybody become accountable for what they did. So we actually got given in one day when we had our sort of yearly catch up as a business. An external business manager came in and we actually had to show that what we got paid, that we were bringing 3 times our pay in gross profit.
All right, listen to this, guys. He's looking at an X here. So we get paid $100. They want to have an ROI, a return on investment of 3 times 300. So there's a multiple. Now out of that comes all expenses. That's why it was a multiple. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's gross profit. So that's profit to the business. Yeah.
So when you went into that activity and people say, oh, that's micromanagement and oh good. Well, you don't have to micromanagement all the time when things are flying, but as long as you're measuring what the ROI is. And what happened when you started to measure all of the activities that people were doing as a review, obviously, because things weren't going as well as you'd like? What was the outcome?
So, well, just to dive into that a little bit further, they actually also made everybody accountable every single day. So we had to fill out a planner for our week of all of our activities, including the ROI dollar figure of that activity that we were completing, and then we had to submit that at the end of the week. So a plan and then what actually happened. So there was some pretty deep reviews going on. It is very micromanagery, but we did have to do that. And like myself as well, I was not super stoked at the start. I was not really keen on it because you're like, well, we're doing, this takes time, but really it's only 5 to 10 minutes of your day out of 8 hours. It's not much. And you're really prioritizing things and it makes you think, well, do I really need to do this? So the outcome, well, for me, for the business, a lot of people did lose their jobs because they weren't bringing in any income or not near enough for the business. So it turned into like a little team of people who were bringing in a lot of income, and it also boosted up that income because we're not paying people to do nothing, and it was very cutthroat because we didn't have time to be developing those people who weren't making income for the business at the time. We had to really cut it out and potentially brought in some other new employees who had a good track record, but we kept the ones who were good, had to get rid of the ones who weren't. And there was people who weren't doing anything that was bringing investment. They were sort of, flying under the radar, I guess you could say. So it really exposed salespeople who weren't performing, and then they obviously got moved on. But for me, it gave me a bit of a kick in the bum because it made me reassess. I didn't know anything really about ROI before this. So when we went into this, it made me really assess, like when I went into a meeting, before I even planned to go into that meeting, I'd be going, well, what is the return on investment for me going into this half an hour meeting going to be for the business? Is it worth it? Am I wasting my time? Is this going to give money back to this business?
Now, guys, listen to what he's saying. He's saying everything he's doing now that he's gone through and done that micromanagement process and so forth. He said, well, gee whiz, we are in a business. We've got to look at profit. Not every single thing in a business has immediate ROI. But keeping, let's say, change rooms nice and clean will have people not complaining and leaving. Sending out the invoices means that you'll then get paid. So at the end of the day, having that mindset of going into a meeting, say, how's this going to give me an ROI? How's the business going to get an ROI? In other words, all right, we'll have a meeting, but what are the outcomes from the meeting that are going to help increase, otherwise, let's say, staff satisfaction? That's an ROI. Or could it be making sales or getting more leads? So when you found things that were not giving an ROI, what did you do?
I removed them pretty quickly. So, and there was a lot of things. You'd be pretty surprised when you sort of begin to do that. It does take a bit of time to really get your head around it and to learn.
What some examples of things you took away that were, like, I keep them relatively generic, but what were some things that you were finding that you were doing or your team were doing that were giving no return?
Well, there's things that you can simplify in a lot of ways. So some of the things were more of a simplification, probably more of a simplification than doing, which, you know, templates and things like that. So you might take an initial time investment, but you don't have to continue to create those templates in the future. Things like that to recreate like a quote every single time. So it was really like simplifying things to make them quicker. So I might have had initially, when I did my plan, I might have had something like, I might have spent 2 hours in a day writing up quotes or something. So it was like, well, the return on investment is pretty low for this. So when I did that, so there was an ongoing chat with my manager at the time, and he'd be like, well, how can you minimize this time so you can spend more time on these higher ROI activities? So it was me, well, what can I do? And it was like, obviously I was getting coached, which was great. So I was saying, well, I can simplify this process so it only takes me 20 minutes instead of 2 hours. And then the next activity, which brings huge ROI, I can spend more time doing that activity.
That's great. So guys, think about what you're doing every day, what your team, now you're a solo warrior. What are you doing every day? What are you doing that you can say, well, gee whiz, how could I simplify it? Maybe outsource it to someone that could do it cheaper, and you spend the time doing the big rocks. Now, let's say it's something that you should be good at, but you're bad at. You might need training. You might need to do some PDR. You might need to put your hand up for help because maybe something you can't take out. But simplification, and write down, well, I spent 2 hours on doing that. Gee, that's an hour and a half or so that I could be doing something that's going to give us an ROI. That's only worth this much money. What could you actually simplify and change? So this is a big deal because people don't do this, Shane. I mean, in your experience, how often have you seen people doing activities that have low ROI?
All the time in every business. I might walk into a friend's business and just be chatting to them, and I might ask them something about what they did today, like what they actually did in their business, and they're the business owner. And when they tell me, I'm like, well, you know, I'm just thinking, you know, that none of these things are any benefit to your business. What are you doing? Like, you're spending all this time doing these things, but you're not going to get any money back for it. You know, it's like they've obviously, they've got a clean, might be a gym. They might have a very clean gym, might have everything looking very nice. But they're spending time, you know, doing things around in the gym that don't need to be moved. They might spend 2 hours doing that, rearranging it. I'm like, you don't need to rearrange your gym right now. Has anyone said anything to you about it? No, they haven't. Why are you doing this? You know, you could
actually you hit a bit of a nerve there, especially in the health and fitness industry. The new black, as Richard Beattie says, is cleanliness. So when you're seen to be cleaning and so forth, that gives you an ROI because that's going to be, people are going to see your place is safe and they'll tell their friends. So they'll maybe get some referrals or more members will come back. So that's right now a really high ROI activity. But moving the equipment around and say not cleaning would be a waste of time. So there's a perfect example. Example. So from your experience, was that a successful exercise, going through and spending the time and writing those things down, even though it was arduous?
Yeah, we did it for 6 months, and it was very arduous, but it definitely successful. It really changed the way that I think about business and as a staff member. And what it did for me, it created more buy-in for me into the business, which maybe at the beginning there was a lot of tension and a bit of back and forth with people. So it really created more buy-in for me because I understand it more, even personally for me, outside of work, how valuable my time is. So even when I'm not working and I might catch up with a friend, I'm like, well, is this worth it? Like, is it worth going to do this? Like, is this going to be worth it for me? So you really assess every activity that you do in your whole life. I did from this. So it was a big game changer for me, even though it was not fun at the beginning. By the end, I really understood it, and now it's ingrained in me. Like, I don't even think about it. It's just something that I do. So, and when I see other people like sitting there and wasting time or not doing tasks that are important, putting off the big tasks that are going to be big, like really valuable for the business, they put them off because they know that they take a little bit more work, but they're the big return on the money. Like, they're going to generate a lot of income for the business, but they put them off because they're a hard task. But I realize now I don't even think about the difficulty of the task. I think, well, if this is going to give me this back, I need to do it, because it's going to be more rewarding to do that for the business and for myself than putting it off is going to be. So
yeah, people actually have a thing called busy work, don't they? They do all the things that are easy to do, like wiping down this or doing this or moving these boxes away because it's a bit grubby. But then they don't do the big rock, which is going to give them a return that actually pays them or pays or brings money to the business. And I see it regularly. There's lots of busy work that I say, well, where's the ROI on that? I mean, if you're making a lot of phone calls and you're leaving lots of voicemail messages and no one's calling you back, you've done that for 2 hours. Oh, I've done all these calls. Just, oh, terrific. How many people called you back? None. Where's the ROI? Well, it might come back later. Well, hang on a tick. Did they come back today? No. Well, how can we stop leaving all those messages? How about we send a calendar link and just do it once or twice? When all of a sudden, then you got about 2 hours back. I've actually said this to a business just yesterday. I said, all right, about 5 hours worth of telephone calls, lots of voicemail messages and emails. No one returned. I said, wow, what else do you do the rest of the day? Oh, I was really busy doing that, sending lots of emails. I said, how many emails returned? They said, none. I said, wow, so there's very low or no ROI. How much did you get paid? I said, how can we reduce that? So we said, oh, well, let's do the voicemail message, send an SMS with let's say a calendar link. Anyway, straight after the phone call, this person did it. Sent a message just purely by text message with an acuity link or a calendar link. Bang, an appointment booked. I went, my goodness, he gives me text message back. He says, good grief, it's going to save me about 4 hours a day. I said, what would you be doing in that 4 hours that's going to give you a high ROI? And boy, it was a little bit of a light bulb moment. Is that the sort of thing that's happened to you?
Yeah, definitely a similar thing. I guess it's in a very micro-managed way though for me, I guess. Like that's a bit of like a big tick for just one kind of area.
That's right.
I have it for every single activity I do. So
perfect. Guys, hear that again. It's for everything that James, he's a sales manager. But if you're a salesperson, you're your sales manager. Don't rely on someone else to do it. Now, the people that Shane works with have the opportunity to do that, and he has the experience. Start measuring what you're doing and saying, what did I do the last 3 hours, and what was, all those things? Did they create an ROI? Getting 5 cups of coffee, did that give me an ROI? No. Yeah, talking to my friend on the phone for 20 minutes, was that giving me an ROI? They say, oh my goodness, I've just spent 1.5 hours doing stuff that gave me 0 for my business. If you're a solo warrior. And also, if you're a person in a business, well, your performance is going to be low. So you would say that has changed the direction in your career and your success?
Yeah, definitely. It's changed everything. It's made working and the jobs that I do easier. So
ooh, I love that.
What's important. It's made it easier, yeah. Because I really understand now what's important, and you cut rid of the crap, you cut all the crap out. So when you don't have the crap, you think clearer, and you know your priorities better, rather than having all of these little scattered things. You have big, clear priorities, and you know how to get big wins easy. You know how to get easy wins, easy big wins. So I've got this way where now in my career where I can sort of go into a business and I'm able to see like big wins easily without, just because I'm like, well, why are you doing this? This is a waste of time. And then I say, like, well, what's an easy way to make money for you? And they're like, this is how we make money easy. I'm like, why are you doing that all the time? You know, like, why are you wasting time doing this? Yeah. So it's, yeah.
People need to hear that, but people are too scared to say it. Now, what if you you go into a team and they've got other people doing those things? Let's say we're talking to people, the owners and let's say sales managers, and all of their people are doing busy work or lots of busy work throughout the day and not streamlining stuff or putting their hand out for help. I mean, you're measuring all of your KPIs and benchmarks daily. And you did say to create the time to do it. But what happens when those people are doing this busy work with low ROI and they're not creating that 3, 5, or in most cases, a lot of cases, they want a 10x. What do you do?
Well, it's really, like I mentioned earlier, it's really getting down and having a conversation with that person and really understanding if they have what they're doing. So sometimes I might even get someone to show me how they schedule their own day. Show me how you do it. Because, you know, as you know, we have people who are high I's in the disc, and they might not be good at scheduling. They're good at starting things and getting excited, and then they stop halfway and they never complete the task, or they don't have any task lists. They just wing it. So it's sitting down with them, and it's like because just scheduling, it's not hard. Anyone can do it, but it's a tool, and it's something some people need to learn. And I've found that even people who have been working for 20, 30 years don't even know how to do this, how to write a schedule of their day and to prioritize their tasks. So if you're working an 8-hour day, well, what are the tasks you need to complete? What's the priorities first? And then set your time to when you're going to do them and completing them. And what happens if something else pops up, and how are you going to get it done that day? It's having that sort of set up with that person so that they can understand on a deeper level what's important and cut out the crap. And then sometimes you have to watch them. You have to check in consistently to make sure that they're doing it. And then it just creates that sort of part where you're not micromanaging them, but also supporting them in completing those tasks.
It comes back down to what you said earlier, having a system, having the KPIs and the activity, measure the results, then move backwards. But the big rock here is accountability.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard you say it a couple of times today, and just in the SAC, in the Sales Authority Club, when we just started into this working from home component, we introduced a process called the working from home plan. Now, you've said it a couple of times. I just want to reiterate it. You've said you need to have a plan the day before for the next day. So I'm a big believer in this and making sure it's clear indication of what you're going to do. So you do your progressive plan throughout the day and just review it at the end and say, this is what my outcome, but you do a plan and what are my priorities for tomorrow. Now, don't have a major big list, as James Short said. Make sure that's in groups of 3 and then ticking them off. But then from what you've said today, look at that plan and say, hey, where's the ROI in those activities? And then you might juggle them around a little bit. So having a plan and then executing the plan, and then let's say ticking everything off, having a next plan for the next day. So it's set because it's based on ROI. Have I got it right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Breaking down everything to an ROI. And I think sometimes what I've had in my experience when we did that really specific one is each day actually had a total ROI.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
So if you had a big day and it says like, well, you could have 10 grand ROI on that day. And because you've had, so we also.
How did that make you feel when you did your little sheet? It only took you 5 or 10 minutes, but then you saw that what you did for the day had an ROI of 10K.
Yeah, it makes you think differently. Like, is that right? So I think it makes you really assess, well, am I measuring these activities ROI right? Because is it really going to be 10 grand? And we also would have to do a monthly sort of breakdown as well. So they would sort of add up all of our ROIs from that month and say, well, show us your wins, show us the income that this has generated.
Oh, this is a big deal.
ROI.
Don't just write it down, but prove what that was. See, guys, listen to this. You can write down what the ROI was. You go, yay, but then you're going to say, well, hang on a tick. Show me how it's been realized. So it's not just blue sky. Oh, that's lovely. It's a review at the end. You can have a celebration at the end of a $10,000 ROI day, but then to say, hang on a tick, on that day, show us how that was realized. Perfect. And did sometimes it come up and it wasn't realized?
It was, yeah. So it was a hard one because sometimes you overestimate your ROI for an activity, and you get to the end of the month and your ROI of the work you did that month was well under what you brought in as income. So it's obviously you have to justification, or it's you going back to the drawing board and really learning, because it's not like it's sort of a failure. On my behalf, it would have been almost like I failed, but I learned from that. And then,
so we'll call them a lesson. Oh, gee, I overestimated. There's a lesson. Next time I'll do it this way, so we don't get into trouble for this. And by the way, it's not a big stick component here. It's measuring. Now, if you're struggling, you can put your hand up for help. But when you actually are let's say taking the Mickey out of the system and just having zero ROI, well, there's a serious problem. Would you agree?
Definitely, yeah. Those zero ROI activities should be really removed. And there's some things, getting a coffee in the morning. Some people spend half an hour getting a coffee in the morning. They get into work, they spend half an hour getting a coffee. There's no ROI in that. So there's no point. You're wasting your time. So like have your coffee before you come to work, or, sit at your desk and complete some tasks while you have it. Don't waste your time walking down 10 minutes to the coffee shop, 10 minutes back, half an hour by the time you've done that trip. And if it's your business, that's you throwing money down the drain, because your time is valuable. And I think it's understanding how valuable your time is, especially when it's your business and you're in your job. I know friends who run their own businesses and work 14 hours a day, and they're not bringing any income in working those big days. They're not changing anything. They're not growing the business. It's just the fluff jobs that they're doing, the little things that make them look like they're busy, and they sound busy. They say, oh, I've been working 14-hour days, 7 days a week for months. And I'm like, and they're like, the business is still struggling. I'm like, what are you doing? Obviously not. Like, it's not.
Keep doing what you've always done. You're going to always get what you always got. So they should be looking at what the ROI is. They're saying, look, these are activities I maybe should be doing better at. I'm spending time doing it wrong. Stop. Get an expert in to help. It might cost you a bit of money, but at least you're going to get an ROI from it. You might spend $100 on an expert, but you're going to get $200 back, and you got 3 hours back instead of doing it wrong. I know so many people that try to build a website or try to do a lead funnel. It takes them hours and hours. And it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden they're getting no leads or whatever. Well, they could have just spent $1,000 or two to get it done properly. And then they could be doing the conversion, which they're experts in. And this is a classic example when people spend 14 hours days and saying they're busy, and you're saying to them, hang on a tick, why you're doing those things, you're getting no ROI. And that's because of your mindset shift, because you went through the process that you went through a number of times with other businesses. Will I be right?
Definitely, yeah. It's through that one major experience where we wrote down everything we were doing. That was a big shift that happened, but it's a continuous shift that happens as well. And yeah, something that I really found valuable as well is when we did this, I actually found like I had more time, and that everything was clearer, because I wasn't wasting time. Because a lot of the time we find ourselves doing multiple tasks at once. Like, I've got to do this, and you start doing this, and I forgot about this, and then you're working on so many things at the same time. Where when we really did that plan, it was like, no, I'm spending these 3 hours just working on this task, and I would be doing it more efficiently. My mind was more focused on that task, and I found that like I would complete it, I'd get to the end of it, and then I'd move on to the next task. Rather than
if you were going to talk to somebody out there that's in your position now.
Sorry?
Let's say we're talking to someone that's a sales manager, or maybe a sales professional working for a company, or they got their own business.
Yeah.
You've got now that you're saying something quite precious. I had more time. I had more clarity. I had more time. I had more clarity. And by the way, more satisfaction, because you're getting success and your business is growing or whatever. That's what everyone's dreaming of, Shane. So if you were to say to the guys and girls out there, managers, owners, business owners, entrepreneurs, whatever. And they're saying, yeah, I need to do this. And I need to go and start doing a plan, ticking off the ROI. What are two big things that they could do right now today to start that process?
Well, I think that one of the main things is really assess what you're doing and your ROI immediately, because it's not hard. It's not really hard. Some activities are hard to do, but it gets you thinking in a different way, because so often we do all of the things we do, we never think about what's going to be returned on it. So thinking about what I'm doing right now, is this going to be generating ROI to the business, and how much ROI? And it will really, that immediately will change the way you think about the tasks that you're doing and activities you're doing, and everything that you do. And then obviously measuring the outcome of that. So you have to think about it, and you have to really assess yourself, and you have to be open-minded when you do it as well, because there's going to be things that you have to cut out that you love to do.
Should they ask for someone else to have a look at it and maybe give a different perspective on it? Now, I'm thinking what you're saying is organize it, but I'm assuming you're saying write it down, because if we just put it in the head, it's just going to be gobbledygook. So they've got to write down, and probably we recommended it in chunks, like the morning, a stanza, then the second part of the morning, and then it's like 3 bits. And you've seen the working at home plan, so that's the morning start, morning tea, afternoon, go through the lunchtime, then 2 stanzas in there, just write it down. And would you suggest, if they look at it and go, oh my God, that's crap, and I don't know what to do, should they maybe get someone else to have a look at it?
Yeah, I think that they could probably ask someone else for assistance, find someone who knows what they're doing in that area, like, so they can have a look at their business. Probably best to have someone within that field, like if you're working in a certain industry, to say, like, well, how much is it to make 50 calls you're calling cold calling, and for gym sales, and then finding out what they measure their ROI as, and having a discussion about it, because discussions are valuable. And that's what I get out of you when I talk to other people in the industry, because everyone sees things differently and offers new perspectives.
Yes.
And it's always very valuable, because you'll be like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And then you walk away and you assess the way you do it and go, now I think about it differently. And that brings you more value immediately. So that's probably another one, having discussions to people about this as well. And when I talk to you, like, I think I've said to you heaps of times that I get off the phone and I'm fired up and I'm pumped up about it, because I love this stuff, and I'm passionate about it. So I think that that having these kind of conversations, they really ignite and change your way you think, and you get another perspective thrown at you, and you go, oh, I didn't think of that. And then you start to change the way you think about it, and you can implement those things immediately.
You just said a big word there, Shane. You are masterful at getting things down and implementing. And that's a real fantastic trait that I've been so impressed and inspired by, how quickly you implement, but not just with yourself, but with your team. And you've actually given everyone so much opportunity to reassess what they're doing today. And you've told them that you've actually had significant shift. Just that one arduous type component has changed the way you're thinking. And guys, I know he doesn't like to wave a flag. This guy actually smashes targets all the time. If his team aren't there, he'll just stand there and do the damage. And I remember at one day he had to actually make his target. He put a number out there, shared it with his team, and they went right through to the absolute death, and they actually over exceeded it. Now, this is an implementer. He said, we'll stop doing this. We're going to do this for ROI. And it's what he's telling you, is it can be done. So take on board what Shane has said. And, bottom line is implementation is everything. But I think another thing you said, Shane, was collaborate and work within a community, because I think you've said right at the very beginning, it was the leaders you have hanging out with, the people that helped you, what you're going to learn. Be open to learn, drop the ego and say, I can actually learn from others. So would that be a big rock for today that you would suggest that people do?
Yeah, definitely. Throughout my whole life and today, even, I have 2 awesome, amazing leaders that offer me perspectives and I can go to, and I know I can go to be vulnerable to these leaders. I can say, I'm really struggling with this. What can you do to help? And then they really just offer me this great advice and things that they've gone through in the past. And I can go away and do whatever I like with that advice. Obviously, you can listen to things from your leaders and you don't have to do it. It's up to you to take that on, and it's up to you to be open-minded to your leaders or to your mentors. And so I always choose to really listen and take on their advice, because they've been through it. I'm only young, so most people have a lot more experience than I do.
I'd beg to differ. You might have years, my friend, but the amount of things you've put into your career, it's been 8 years, or a little bit over 8 years in sales in particular. What you've experienced and what you've achieved, a lot of people will take a lot longer, maybe even a lifetime to do. And guys, I want you to hear a word that Shane said just so congruently. He feels comfortable to go into his team leaders, his mentors, and to show vulnerability. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's actually when you put your hand up for help, people will come in flocks to help you. And you just got to take the advice of what Shane also said. When it goes away and implements it. No good getting great advice, showing vulnerability and not doing it. So, Shane, we could talk for hours on this topic. I mean, it's just been outstanding. So, thanks so much for joining me today. Look, if people would like to follow you and just see what you're doing, because I know you do some great stuff, where could they find out a little bit more about you? I think you were saying some on LinkedIn. Is that right?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the best place to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn a fair bit. I don't post all the time, but I'm always on there. So yeah, jump on. It's just Shane Holt. If you just search me on LinkedIn, you'll see me on there.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, look, guys, go on LinkedIn, check out what Shane's doing. He does some wonderful things. And he also, he does other things outside of his sales profession as well. But he's an absolute sales professional personified. He's a leader, he drives, but also he talks pretty straight talk, doesn't he? Hey? So thanks again, Shane. You're invaluable, and sure, you might be 28, but tons of experience. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Guys, straight talk, get it down. It's your action that's going to make the difference. Listen to a superstar like that, and I just see these new leaders coming through. It just really inspires me. And they're doing things a little differently. What are you going to do to measure your ROI, create that accountability, find out what drives your team members, not just to get the job done, but what makes them happy? And who are you surrounding yourself with? Who can you put your hand up and say, hey, I don't know what to do? Now, inside the Sales Authority Club, we have a small community. You've all starting to gel together and having chats with that outside of just the training, which is outstanding. This is a safe community. Now, Shane's in the community. Reach out, have a chat with him. So action is everything, as I keep telling. Once is never enough, so listen to this again. I'm Dr. J. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.